thing. So if I turn my camera off, it's so I can keep.
Mhm. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is March 3rd, 2022, and this is the biweekly Police Accountability Board meeting. And we're so happy that you joined us tonight. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into our schedule. And I'm actually going to have, and I didn't discuss this, I apologize, but can you go ahead and do the roll call, please, Marina?
Sure. Chair Wilson.
Here.
Member Nikolov. Member Perez.
Here.
Member Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Member Settle. I know Rabbi Settle's here. And Member Harrison.
Here.
Okay, I believe that all aforementioned members are accounted for.
Okay.
Member McIntosh?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Yep. So Member McIntosh is here. Okay. Marina, can you go ahead and send the link again to the vice chair, please? She's having trouble getting in.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, and I also was trying to figure that out, so I lost my place. So, excuse me, everybody. Okay, so tonight we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the approval of minutes. And we are looking at minutes from 2/17/22. And then I assume everybody's had a chance to look at it. And so then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving minutes from 2/17/22? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
One. Thank you. Six. All right, motion carries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 to 2.
Yes.
Mhm. you.
Unanimously, yes.
Thank you. Okay, and so we have the staff report next. Executive Director, go ahead, please.
Good evening, board members. There are a few items of interest. The first is that the city's law department has responded to our rules and regulations for investigations. They have sat down with those rules and come up with some of their responses. We at the staff level are going to be formulating a response to their response over the next week and plan on sitting down with them one-on-one to discuss it. I think there's a lot of room for compromise, agreement. I think that there's just a lot of things that can be settled just by discussion, getting us into a good place. So I will make sure that the board receives a copy of both the law department's comments as well as ours. I want to wait until the staff have a chance to fully think things through. We'll be sitting down next week with council's liaison to the board, Kim Smith, to discuss these things as well. So council's looped in. I've spoken with Council President Melendez about this, about where we're going, keeping him updated as well. So again, I just want to give a shout out to our new staff, Dwayne Bosco and Shanoa May, for doing a phenomenal job coordinating the response to that, making sure we come in with a measured approach, because I do think we're going to make a lot of progress there. In terms of training, the training committee has been meeting regularly. I won't get into the details about that, but at least on the staff side, we've seen phenomenal progress in terms of developing that training curriculum that will be rolled out in April and in May. In terms of the office space, there are some final city mandated reviews that have to happen, but I hope to have a finalized contract in place in the next few days so we can start staged move-in. I know Roosevelt Antonetti and the operations division have been working exceptionally hard preparing us for that move. It's going to be a major logistical challenge. And I know that we're going to be working with departments from City Security Department, Department of Environmental Services, and I'm just thrilled that we've got a collaborative team approach here. And I want to thank the law department for their exceptionally hard work on negotiating that contract on PAB's behalf. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the PAB's staffing model. I know that over the last 8-9 months, PAB's staffing model has been going through some serious development. And in our last meeting with Human Resources, we received a lot of really great feedback from both HR and from our council liaison, Kim Smith. Every single division at PAB has been working hard to come up with revisions to a staffing model that can make sure that we have ladders for people to come in and have internal promotion. We have good entry-level positions at pay that's reasonable. And I think that I've just been very impressed with the staff's ability to incorporate all the comments that we've had to come up with what hopefully is a final vision, so that in the March Civil Service Commission meeting, which happens near the end of this month, we will have that final staff and vision ready to go so that we can finalize all of our hires by spring and hit the ground running with a fully staffed PAB in a new office space with the rules and regulations ready to go again by the end of this spring. So we are hopefully on track with all of that. And again, I just want to give shouts out to all of the new staff who've, again, come in many circumstances the day of work and just getting right to it. So thank you to everyone who's come on board, all going close to 30 now people that we almost have. It's been wonderful to see them come on board, and these hires, every single person we've picked has been the right one. So thank you all to the hiring committees for their hard work. And the last thing I will say is that the Jobs Committee will be meeting next Tuesday. I know that an item we will be reviewing there is discussing a tweak to the proposing a tweak to the the PAB's rules around hiring, to make sure that we can hire people who have the best experience and qualifications, and they might have some family tie to law enforcement. I know that the Jobs Committee will be discussing that and maybe bringing a proposal to both the board and perhaps City Council. So I just wanted to put that on people's radars. There are specific candidates who we've interviewed and found to be exceptionally qualified, and we just want to make sure that we follow the right legal procedures in terms of thinking about this. So that discussion will happen. I want the public to know that we'll be discussing that too. So definitely tune in on Tuesday evening for that. Outside of that, Chair Wilson, that should wrap up the staff report on our end, though I welcome questions from board members about staff goings on.
Okay, no one has any questions? Okay, great.
Chair Wilson, I will put one thing on people's radars. When we get into the new space, we will hopefully be organizing a meet and greet between board members and the new staff. We'll try and make sure that there's a remote option for people who can't make it. But I know the staff are really thrilled to meet many of you. And I am hoping that we can incorporate board members into the formal training so people get a more direct way of hearing from each of you one-on-one about your stories, your perspectives, et cetera. I know the staff are very excited for that, so I hope that we can get that coordinated in the weeks to come.
Great. I know that the training committee is working on that. So Dr. Harrison.
Connor, I'm a little disorganized in saying this, but that 40-page document that we got copies of that outline how records would be handled and everything. I did have a number of comments about it that I've been just not gotten back to you. But one that I wanted to mention is that I think that there's a difference between the processing of police misbehavior and the evaluation of police procedures and processes. And I don't think that that's given the section on handling processes is, I think, given, number one, given short shrift, and also I think that while the disciplinary section is logically mainly devoted to PAB staff, I think the other aspect, because it has political involvements as well as just philosophical involvement, should have more direct and weighty board input. Does that? I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, Bob. I'll respond in two ways. First, on the and I'll just say it, skimpiness of the section of the rules on policy and oversight. That's intentional because we don't have a chief of policy and oversight in place. We will very soon, and we want to make sure that that person plays a key role in developing those rules. And I'll just say that those policy and systems level investigations are going to happen a little bit later. Right now, our priority is on those investigations and officer misconduct, making sure we launch those. And so those are the sections of the rules that everyone's on focusing right now. To the second point about getting board input, I think it's absolutely important that we receive that input. We want to make sure that the sequencing is right. So I would, again, welcome, I think in that initial email, welcoming people's thoughts, but I want to do it in a structured way. And we want to make sure that what the board is giving input on is stuff that is actually the foundation, right? So making sure that the law department gives some of their input maybe before we move to the next step, because we do want to see, we want to give the board a sense of, okay, here's where we're actually going to be going now, that the parameters in which we can actually work, and then we can have folks come in. So my hope is that, we've been waiting for law department to get there over the last couple of months. And now that they're there, I think we can have the board really dig in on this stuff because we know where there's going to be pushback and not. So my thinking is that we could schedule the rules committee to have a formal discussion review of this. And I'd like to do that in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
So I'll just say for Rena, can you just make sure that we solicit any existing written comments from board members, and then that we calendar that meeting for the next 2 weeks? That would be great.
Okay, can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next will be the chair's report, which was sent to you all today. Just a brief overview. It was pretty brief. Last Tuesday, myself and Ted Forsyth from the Police Accountability Board Alliance, went to an event on reimagining policing. And actually, we were quite surprised because there were about 15 to 20 kids there, and they were all teenagers. And it was a pretty much youth engagement event from I keep saying Teen Challenge, but that's not Teen Challenge. It's Teen Empowerment. And it was really great because what they worked on was policy, and what policies they wanted to see change within the Rochester Police Department, or just changes they wanted to see in general. And they had written pages and pages on these large pieces of paper at every table. There's about 6 tables. And so it was really impressive to see their ideas, how smart they are, how intuitive they are, knowledgeable, like just really so impressive, and just really was a shot in the arm for me. So I know that there will be more events geared towards the young people and towards teen empowerment specifically. And so I asked that Calvin Eaton please keep us informed, because we would love to have more board members show up, talk about their experiences, and then talk about the importance of policy work when it comes to actually addressing some issues within policing. So, but that chair's report has been submitted to you all. Okay. All right, so then next we have a training committee, and we have a committee report from them. Rabbi Settle? Hello, Rabbi? Okay, we'll come back to that. All right, so next we have old business, and we have, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I need a new computer, but sorry. All right. What did you want me to?
Yep, so just a training committee update, please.
Okay, so basically we got an update about the staff training, and we should get a sort of schedule, a detailed schedule this week. With that, and basically the committee thought that our own training sort of falls into two parts. One is our skills training, and the second is our diversity, equity, inclusion training. And that we're going to start with our skills training because we want to be sure that we have that down in order to start, and then move into the other with the understanding that those of us who can do some or part of it in conjunction with the staff will be able to do that once we have that schedule. So we'll sort of figure that out. But once we know what has to be covered and we can get sort of the timing, then we can sort of also schedule our own training, and we'll get feedback from the board about how we'd like to arrange that, whether we want to use alternate Thursdays, whether we want to have special weekend times, whether, you know, how people sort of want to use their time for that. So that's where we are. And I hope that we'll have a sense of sort of how many hours we'll need for that skills training next week.
Apologize, mute. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Rabbi. All right. So next on our agenda, we have from our old business from previous meeting, we were discussing the disciplinary matrix. And I think we were at an impasse. We're not at an impasse, but we still had some information that we needed before we could proceed. Is that correct, Executive Director? Yeah. Are you looking for your mute button? Yeah.
No, I just didn't know if you wanted me to say more than that.
I did. I totally did. I really did.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're looking for more information. I don't necessarily think you have to have it today, but I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything we can add to the conversation that we're still looking for a bunch more. Like, I think the first and second item on the old business, which is RPD access to records, will kind of tie into this, which is we need RPD access to records.
Right.
And so I think that really is kind of where we're getting sticky when we're coming to disciplinary matrix discussion. So do you have an update for us on that end at least?
This is back to the rules section. You know, the city's law department and us actually have to sit down with this. You know, the response we got was essentially a top level response rather than a point by point one. But you know, I think that our plan is to meet with law department next week and then talk about both their concerns, but also our need to move forward with regards to information access. You know, I think that has to happen next week. The timeline is getting kind of close on that stuff. So, and I will say that from all appearances, it does not appear that the law department has issues with our, the law department is on board with our broad access to information across the department. You know, I think that there's obviously everyone wants to make sure that information is held securely, et cetera, all that. But, you know, there should not be a problem with this, but we just have to have communicate both the sense of urgency and the fact that if we're all in agreement that we have this access, let's get that right away and not wait any longer.
I keep talking to myself because I'm on mute. So, okay. So thank you so much for the update. So I think we'll need to really be directed on how to proceed then after we receive that information. I think that there's, you know, I know that there's education that has been done that the board has access to. Rabbi Settle, do you have a question or statement?
No, finish what you're going to say, but I have a comment before we finish the matrix discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. So just finishing the matrix discussion, I know that we're at an impasse where we're going to need some more information that we don't have. And
I just will say that the board staff have been working nevertheless. So they've been contacting lots and lots of other agencies across the country to learn more about the data they used and seeing if we can get some of that data. I know our data analyst has been working on analyzing some of this too, to make our research more robust. And I believe that tomorrow we should have more paper in place that we can, I don't know if it'll be ready to circulate to the board tomorrow, but certainly by early next week, I think we're going to be able to circulate some of that. So the staff has nevertheless been working. We haven't let the delays get in the way of that.
So I guess my question would be, before the rabbi asks her question, and she can answer it right after my statement, is where do we go from here?
I think that the important thing is to figure out exactly how we're going to get community input on this. That's going to be, and I know that, the Public Affairs Division, Natalie Banks, have already been thinking about that. I think the timing is somewhat good also, in the sense that we're going to have board space, physical space, where we can invite people in starting, later this month. So I think the timing actually works out on this. But, I think there's that one path. And then actually, I will say, can people see me? Oh, I bet I'm frozen. Shoot.
You're good.
We can see you and
Good.
hear you.
See you. We can hear you.
We can see you. We can see you and hear you, Connor.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't say anything inappropriate. So what I will say is that, we've been talking with other cities about how they get the exact same data that we are looking for. And without getting into details, it is very clear that in every city where they use a system like RPD uses a system for housing this data, those PABs have access, and it's very easy access. They have a login to the system. So, the more we learn, the more it becomes clear that they should not be significant barriers just getting this, both in terms of technology and in terms of best practices. We've been preparing as much as possible to make sure that there's no barriers in terms of arguments or anything else to getting us the information we need.
Rabbi?
Actually, it's not a question, it's sort of a report back. You might remember I was meeting with Jonathan Corey, and I'm embarrassed that I forgot the staff attorney's name with whom I met. Maybe Connor can help with that.
Aaron Barry?
Yes, thank you. To talk about restorative justice approaches, and we're basically, we're very excited about the idea that we can be modeling this for other PABs and, be a pioneer in this, but it's going to take some time to sort of think through some of the stuff and contact people who can advise us about this. And the thought is that probably, it's something that we'll try to develop alongside whatever other matrix folks come up with, and that may be integrated over time, but probably isn't going to be all there immediately. So just to sort of give you the report back, and that we're sort of contacting folks that we know in Western New York who've worked with us, with the idea of also maybe being connected with some people nationally who can help us think about it.
Great, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is to talk about, I know that there was a story today or yesterday about Spectrum News and about the RPD wellness training update. So I'm wondering if we can get an update as well for ourselves. Executive Director, can you help us with that? We wanted to see if there was anything that you had heard from RPD or anything else that we need to know.
Sure, I can talk about this. This is another one of those tricky places where, and I spoke about this with a number of city council members, including the president of city council, talking about what the best approach here was. Because, in the same way that we are not in a staffing position prepared to start, investigate complaints at the moment, we also aren't in the best position to go in and observe some of these trainings in the way that we need to, right? The rules and regulations we've written out get to establishing clear access to all the trainings we need to, right? And so once the rules are finalized, this shouldn't be a problem. But the issue is, when we do not necessarily have the staff capacity to do this, and I know we're bringing on lots of people, but all of them are either in training or working on getting us to the place where we can investigate things. The idea of us going in there at the present moment to observe, our focus is on getting those rules and regulations in place. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't observe training. And I will say that what is happening right now is that the RPD's trainers are being trained to do this work. So when the RPD starts training its people in this kind of work, we should be able to observe that and also have access to all the materials that's being currently shared with RPD right now. And so, I've made a commitment to do that. Again, speaking with council members, it seems like people understand that that's the most feasible plan. What I don't want to do is get into a situation where we promise to do something, but we can't do it in the right way because of staffing, right? I don't want to disappoint the community. And I know that's all the reason why we have to move as quickly as possible on these rules and in these staff so we can actually start doing this work. And so that's our focus right now. And I wish that we could be attending all these things, and in the very near future, we will.
Reverend Nicola.
Thanks, Connor. I mean, I think it's really wonderful that this is a great first step for our PDB to be taking. Reading the article and seeing the quotes from Ebony Brown and those who are in charge of the auxiliary unit. Obviously, all the right things. Healthier officers are better for the community. They're better for one another. It's great. We want them to be healthy. They're human beings. We really want them to have that wellness. I guess my concern is not just the training now and having access to the materials, but I think for oversight purposes, I wonder what's our long-term approach, right? We all know it's been a year since several big programs that spent lots of city money hiring outside attorneys and people that basically resulted in zero results. Spent a lot of money in WilmerHale. What did that really provide for the community, right? And so I'd love to know that this is not just something that is happening. I'm sure with the best of intentions that will be something we get to have a nice news bite about, but doesn't have a sustainable and long-term care for the officers. Will they hire, what will the auxiliary unit that they're creating do? Will there be people who are there long-term? How effective will it be? Is it actually doing its job, or is it something that people ignore? I'm sure that there are things in place within RPD to monitor that as well, but I get the staffing thing, so no disagreement there, but I do think this is one of the key components, I think, to helping from the RPD side of helping officers. And there's a lot of promises being made, even in this interview with Spectrum. So I'd like to know that we can kind of also see what their long-term goals are. What are some points that we can follow up on? How they report, how can we be involved in that process longer term? Not just so that we can have oversight, but so that the officers are also getting the care they need, and then the community is getting the officers that the community deserves. So I don't know if there's a plan for that, or maybe when you have more staff there is, but I'd love if you have any thoughts in response to that.
I can respond, though. Does it make sense to hear from Board Member Brown and Rabbi Settle first, and I'll respond to all?
Please, thank you. Board Member Brown, go ahead.
Yes, this does not exactly tie in with what we're talking about, but 2 years ago, there was the case with the 9-year-old, and there were other instances. Have we passed the timeline for those citizens to be able to file a report with us? And if not, because officers have to be, I believe it's disciplined, or the discipline window is relatively narrow, have we missed that?
Connor, you want
Director, if you could respond, please.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to turn off my video again because I'm sure that it's me on my end. So I think I got the gist of Board Members Brown's question, and if I don't respond to it appropriately, just correct me. But Rabbi Settle, do you have something last?
Yeah, but it's not, sure, okay. So it's just understanding that staff time right now is limited and has no other focus. There may be board members who could be willing and interested in doing some observations. And to be honest, I'm still waiting for my ride along, and there are other things that I think many of us have been waiting for, and we'd be very happy to take some time to do it. So there's that.
Second that, just out of turn, but yes, exactly.
So I will respond to all these questions, and I'll respond in reverse order. So to Rabbi Settle's question, I think that board attendance at these things is very useful and important. I also think that that is the place where we have faced the most resistance. And, again, the framing has been that non-city employees should not have access to things, right? And yeah, so that's been a consistent, whether it's just having access to buildings, or it's access to information, or restriction of, so that's been a long-standing issue with the city, which is part of the reason why it's so important for our rules to ensure that you aren't treated that way, to make sure that you are treated as appropriately as possible.
I guess I'm confused, because isn't it in the charter that we have?
Making sure that the charter's rules are understood and followed, it has been one of the most important things that we've tried to do. So, and again, some of it is just sitting down at a table and making sure people understand, what the law says. And I'm hoping that, this next week meeting can clear up a ton of this so we can just move forward. And, again, I think we're blessed now to have the staff who have relationships and trust within the existing city structures to help some of these conversations move smoothly.
Can I quick follow up to that? Who is telling you that non-city employees should not be at these trainings? Is it the law department? Is it city council? Who's saying this? I'm
trying to remember all the different folks. What I'll say is that, lots of, and I think we can all talk about, the law department of the past, which I'm sure is not the law department of the current day. But yes, there was a lot of discussion there about from the law department. And again, I think it's a different world now.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to hear. I know the law department should be able to read the clarity of the law pretty clearly. And several city council members talked about how they were present at writing the legislation and clearly know the intent. So it seems like this is, we all know that it's kind of a ring around and it's not cool. But I mean, I understand the complications that you're trying to work with, but I'm sure the public is very aware, like, it doesn't seem like it's a very helpful thing for getting the PAB up and running, for all the pressure that's being put on this board to do our job, to hear complaints, oversee things. So, this is not directed at you, but I'm sure, people listening don't buy that. And I think that it's, I'm glad that you're working to make that even clearer than it is in the legislation to people who I think know better. So thanks.
I just do want to say, our consultants helped write those rules, or they took lead on writing those rules. And those rules do not give away an inch of PAB's power, and in fact, make sure that we can exercise all of our power. And it's my job as executive director to, make sure whatever compromises are necessary to, make things happen that works, but that we don't give up anything that's really important to our work. And that's my promise to the board, and we'll keep each other posted on our success on that. So the other two questions were from board member Brown, the timeline for review of major incidents like the pepper spraying of the 9-year-old on Harris Street. So the general rule is that you have to go 18 months from the time of an incident to launch disciplinary proceedings, by which is generally meant filing of formal charges against an officer. And in that case, that would have to come from the RPD. Now, Arlene, the question is whether or not RPD has already done some of that. Right. So we need to find out what's gone on with these incidents. And I will say, regardless of whether, and because this is why we're trying to move as quickly as possible and open up in spring, right? So we can avoid some of this stuff. But the reality is that regardless of whether or not for these past incidents, we can meet that deadline, we can look into it. And, as a systems and policy approach, uncover information, understand what went wrong, and then talk to the public about it, right? And, without getting ahead of who will be the head of our, policy and oversight division, I can say we're absolutely going to be looking into the pepper spraying of the 9-year-old. I mean, we've already, when that happened, we started to do it, and we're going to end the job there. And the last thing, Board Member Brown, I will say, and this is very important for members of the public to know, if an incident of officer misconduct is criminal, that includes assault, that includes perjury, that includes certain kinds of official misconduct, there is no statute of limitations. There is no statute of limitations for discipline. It's very important for people to understand that. It's also important for people to understand that there's actually a 90-day window from the time of an injury to file a lawsuit. It's a much shorter window. And the important thing for PAB is to inform anyone who works with us of all of the relevant deadlines so that they do not lose any rights that they have. So that will be a very important part of our work, Board Member Brown, thinking about deadlines. To the final question about from Board Member Nikoloff about big picture vision. So again, we do have some big sketch work of vision. The important thing is to make sure that the board drives where that goes. But I think the consensus amongst the policy folks who we have hired is that we actually have to first understand what RPD is and how it is structured and how it operates, right? We have to know what the thing is. And I will say it's actually been very eye-opening seeing how much people who you'd expect to have a lot of information don't know about this system. It's easy to forget that RPD is almost 1,000 employees. It's a huge organization and a massive bureaucracy. It takes time to even understand how they follow basic police practices or how they don't. What is their beat rotation? That kind of stuff, right? How are they organizing platoons? These kind of things. And that has to be one of our top priorities, is just understanding the basic framework. But beyond that, having certain kinds of issue areas to look into. I know one issue is certainly the treatment of Black and brown officers within RPD is a priority. But I think that one of the most important things that our new chief of policy and oversight, who will be coming on board very soon, we can't announce the name until the paper's finalized, but I know one of their priorities is sitting down with all of you to hear more about the systemic issues that you want looked into.
Vice Chair.
I had a question. I had a statement. We were in a meeting the other day with a committee. I can't remember what committee it was we were in a meeting with. So you guys might have to help me with that. But we were going through the RPD data, and we were looking at how certain things were categorized. I would be very interested to see, what did they categorize the incident with the 9-year-old in the database? I know we were talking about that. I think it was like Tuesday or something. I can't remember what meeting that was, but I believe it was last Tuesday. I want to see exactly if our lawyers or the group that we were working with can go back and see, what did they categorize that incident as? And was any one of the officers that was a part of the incident disciplined? And if they were disciplined, what were they disciplined for? Because I know some of the information that we got from the database was a little bit concerning on how they labeled said situation, if that makes sense. If anybody on the board remember what meeting I'm talking about, it will be interesting to see.
I know the information you're talking about, so I can respond to that, Vice Chair.
Oh, okay, good. Because I'm like, some people may not understand.
Right. So let me just explain. So there is a public database that the city released of a limited set of investigations into police misconduct. And from that database, it became clear that there's, it might not always seem like cases are being categorized in ways that might make sense to people like us, members of the community. And so I think what Vice Chair Tucker is asking about is, can we see how RPD has categorized various kinds of misconduct, including the ones that many of us know about, or apparent misconduct that we have seen, like the pepper spraying the 9-year-old. Vice Chair Tucker, this database, the public database, is different from the RPD's internal database. It's called IA Pro. And the law says that we should have direct access to that, right? When we get that access, and it should just be a login for our staff, we will be able to see every aspect of how it was investigated by RPD. So we will be able to answer these questions.
Just one follow-up question. Currently, I know you're stating that we don't have that direct access to the RPD database, but the access that we do have to the public database, how is that different and why is it different from the RPD database? Who's responsible for updating the public database? And obviously the RPD would be responsible for updating, RPD's database, but who's responsible for updating the public's database?
It's the law department of the city, and the public database, and I don't want to misquote it, so I don't have the exact description in front of me, but essentially it is for completed investigations into current officers on the force where those investigations resulted in a finding of misconduct. So you can see, here's the big pool of investigations. So if you're a former officer, if you left the force, you're not in there. If the investigation didn't release in a result of misconduct, you're not in there. If there wasn't a formal investigation, it's not in there, right? And we need to find out, are all of the cases that should be on that database there, right? So there's a lot of open questions about what's on there. And so it's, we can't answer it until we look inside.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's basically the city's well, we don't know if it's the law department, but it's a third party that's updating that public database. So it's not as accurate as the Rochester Police Department.
It's not as comprehensive is what I'll say. It's not as comprehensive.
Not as comprehensive. All right, thank you. Well, that answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if we have any other questions, but if not, please stop me, but we're going to go ahead and move on because we still have to go into executive session. So we're going to be going into executive session to discuss a contract renewal. And we are going to, and that is the reason that we can disclose in public. And so I am going to ask for a motion to go into executive session in a second, please.
Chair Wilson, can I just, before, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Are we adjourning to executive session? So is this kind of the end of the public meeting? Okay.
Yes, thank you for clarification. Yes.
On the advice of our amazing new lawyers, I've just been asked to give as much specificity around the reason for adjournment as possible. The board has, again, the open meetings law allows the board to go into executive session for specific reasons. One of those reasons is when the board is discussing any matter that could lead to the continuation or ending of a specific contract with a specific kind of person. So not some like just general, are we thinking about a contract, but here's a person or here's a contract. And that's exactly what the board is doing. The board is going into decisive session to discuss whether or not to continue a very specific contract or enter into a new kind of contract for board support services. And so, the open meetings law allows us to go in executive session so that we don't have to disclose personal information about people whose financial records we're going to be talking about, that kind of thing. So I just want people to understand exactly why we're doing this.
Thank you. All right, so motion's on the floor and looking for a second. Vice Chair, we have a second. Member Brown, we have a second as well. Let's call you Dr. Brown. Okay. All right, so all in favor of executive session?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay,
And
that looks
everybody?
unanimous.
thank you. All right, so we will see you all soon. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.